Japan announced the Fugaku Supercomputer. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. And it claimed the top spot on in relation to supercomputers in the world, being the fastest supercomputer, carrying out 2.8 times more calculations per second than an IBM machine in the US. I'm always fascinated by these and what they're used for. Effectively, they're room-sized machines. You could, sort of imagine, those really old-school 1940s computers with the tapes or whatever, but now they're super high-tech. They are still taking up the same amount of space, but they're really serious in terms of their computing power. And obviously put to much more specific, really hardcore uses, dedicated to, solving problems or whatnot. And what was also interesting about this particular supercomputer was that it was based off an ARM chip. And obviously we've had, not that they're anywhere near in the same league or anything like that, but obviously the Macs are going towards that, PCs are looking at that. That's obviously a very small variation of what we're talking about here, but it's interesting that they chose to go with that type of chipset as well, and it seems to indicate whether or not, I'm not entirely sure how this one would work, but it seems like that whole trying to get more performance with less power type mindset seems to be pervading through the I guess the computer and tech industry, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Well, one also there on that last comment, power is expensive these days, and supercomputers drain a lot of power. So, but it's very exciting, and I think the way that they've been using the computer in Japan to predict where COVID outbreaks might be, rather than looking backwards. So what we typically do, say in Australia, is we backward trace. Someone presents, and then we look backwards at all their contacts and try to go backwards. Apparently what they're doing in Japan is a technique where they're trying to look forwards at who might come next, rather than just simply going backwards. And so they're using that computer to try to work these things out. We know that they're a very different society to ours, but it certainly appears to be working for them.
Absolutely. But even just like and the COVID type use cases is interesting in terms of not just that, but I think they were talking, if I can actually find it here, that they were getting it to work on, and if it comes up quickly enough, it's churning out of course, what you're saying is churning out simulations demonstrating the frightening ease with which coronavirus spreads between human hosts on trains and in other indoor settings, which is obviously disturbing as well. But you can imagine if it can do that, it can do so many things. And with so many applications. But of course, I'm guessing there's a little bit of competition and bragging rights as well. This is the first time in 11 years that Japan's sort of cranked one out that has beaten either America or China. America and China have kind of been vying for those spots in the past 11 years. And it's probably good that, there's another player that came in to, sort of add to the fray, so to speak.
Well, capitalism, you want as many competitors as you can have, and 2 isn't a whole lot of competitors. 3 isn't that much more, but 3 is better than 2. So let's hope, the Indians or the Europeans or even Australia sets forward. I know we've got some pretty impressive supercomputers in Australia, but probably not quite up there yet.
Something we can maybe look into in a future episode or something is how long it would take for that type of computing power that they've created now to sort of eventually make its way down to, consumer level over how, it would seem that, it took decades and decades in the past for it to get there, but all of this sort of stuff is accelerating as it's going along. So it'd be interesting if, 20 years time, is it going to take that long that you're holding a device and you can hold a device in your hand that's got that kind of computing power?
Well, I think you could be right, and there must be someone who's done a blog or something on this, but I think today, if you have a top of the range i7 chip, for instance, I think you've got the equivalent of a supercomputer from 15 years ago or something, haven't you? So something like incredible like that. So, or 20 years. So, yeah, be a very interesting app.
Yeah. Well, I guess just finally, it'd be nice to be able to, sort of play around with it if they ever allowed, the layperson to go in and have a bit of a play around with it. I'm sure it's not as simple as plugging in your Bluetooth keyboard and mouse and away you go, but it would definitely be interesting to play around with.
Well, from the sort of experience I've had with them, the sad thing for the ordinary person is we just don't have enough data to stick in there. Like, so these supercomputers literally deal with millions of data points, and we can't generate them as individuals. So you need a collective, like a population-wide sort of approach. So anyway, millions of data points, and unfortunately for us mere mortals, we can't generate them ourselves.